should.
All right.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Rick and Danny Show. We're excited to be back. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, so we appreciate you guys putting up with us during Brenna's makeshift filler time space. Although I have heard from some people that maybe the regular podcast is just a makeshift filler time space. So I don't know.
Oh. Yeah, it's nice to be back.
The people like it, I think. So, well, 10 of them.
You're tracking those numbers?
Yeah.
Okay.
How are our subscribers?
Really good.
Doesn't Brenna feel just checked out?
Really good.
Right now she does.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
But she might be doing research that we don't realize what she's doing there.
Yeah.
Right
okay.
now? Right
No,
Right
just,
now.
Generally speaking.
No.
Oh, I'm a homeowner now.
Listen.
Now I don't have time to do the podcast.
No. I'm a one-woman marketing department.
That's true.
But we're hiring
true.
someone. She starts March 13th.
Officially.
Officially.
Oh, good.
Oh, that's
nice.
That's
So,
soon. You're going to get help soon.
So,
That's great.
Good.
should
So
I catch it.
so she'll be more engaged next time for you, Rick.
Yeah.
Yeah, either that or she'll start bossing us around even more.
Yeah, well, I just can't make you happy, can I?
No. The sooner you realize that.
I've accepted
Better.
it. I've accepted it. You know the best, if I send out a marketing email, the absolute best response that I can get from Rick is strong work, Brenna, and nothing else. Because that means that he's read this, whatever I sent, several times, and he can't find anything wrong with it. And he has nothing else to say except strong work, Brenna. It's the highest compliment.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I love it.
I didn't mean anything malicious by it.
No,
I mean
know.
it. Yeah.
No, I know.
Oh.
It's just what I'm saying.
Other
is,
emails he's had many things to say or
Exactly.
comment about.
If
I
he
usually,
just
I usually
responds-
don't have many things to say. I usually have like one very pointed, and it's usually not to Brenna.
No, it's one very pointed thing that spirals. But again, those just strong work, Brenna,
Makes you feel good.
makes me feel good.
So, Danny, I know you have something you want to bring to the listeners' attention today.
Yeah, I thought a good topic to talk about is the gallery test. So I gave a recent lecture at the Jacksonville Exchange Club after a nice invite from one of my patients, and I talked about cancer screening.
Did you see his chest puff up a little bit when he
well,
said that?
you know.
I mean, just you got a little dirt on your shoulder, buddy. You might want to brush that off. There you go. There you
Thank
go.
you. Thank you. And I thought it was nice to bring up the gallery test because it's in the news lately. It's it's not an FDA approved cancer screening test, but it is a new technology that I think is going to get more press and potentially in the future be utilized by practitioners. And I wanted to talk about what that is.
And this is similar or the same as to what last year we had Jeff Newman on. He was talking about insurance, and part of one of the things he was mentioning was this. Is this the same test or similar?
Same test, yes. So the company called Grail makes this gallery test, which is a multi-cancer early detection test, and it's used, and they're promoting it for use in patients above the age of 50 to use as a supplement to regular cancer screening that's age appropriate. So it is not FDA approved, but it's available under the CLIA waiver because it is a central lab test. So providers can order it, but the FDA has not approved it. I don't think any organization in medicine has really supported the use yet, at least nothing I've come across yet. But what I did in this lecture was talk a little bit about what it is and the advantages and disadvantages of it. I think it's got both some advantages, some disadvantages. And I don't think it's ready for prime time in terms of from a clinician standpoint. But as Jeff said, insurance companies are starting to offer it. So patients, how it works is it's a blood test, and it's a blood test that detects cell-free DNA. And so what it's looking for is fragments of cell-free DNA, and they have this special technology to look at methylation patterns in the cell-free DNA to detect cancer. And they've done or have a large database where they can analyze someone's blood, and depending on the methylation pattern, which methylation pattern means how the genes are being regulated in the DNA. There's certain patterns to the way certain genes are turned on and certain genes are turned off, and they've established a database to say, with this pattern, it's consistent with this type of cancer or not, And so when they get a patient's blood sample collected, and sent to the company for analysis, you'll get a result. And I think it takes, I forget if they said it takes about 2 weeks or so to get back, but you get a result that says either a signal's been detected or a signal has not been detected. And that would mean a cancer signal. And sometimes they're able to say whether that cancer signal is coming from a certain area in the body, like breast cancer or prostate cancer or et cetera. So one of the feasibility studies for the test, they called it a CCGA study. It was prospective multi-center. They took 15,000 participants, with some with cancer and some without. And they ran the test on those individuals. The sensitivity for picking up on cancer, so in patients with cancer, how good was it at having a positive test if you know the patient has cancer? 51%. So that was the sensitivity of the test. And then the specificity for patients who don't have cancer, how often was the test negative? 99.5%. So it was highly specific, not very sensitive. One of the critiques that I made looking at the data is two of the most common cancers, prostate in men, breast in women, had the lowest sensitivities. So you look at, you say, if we're going to use this as let's screen everyone with this test, it's not picking up on the two most common types of cancer. I think prostate cancer was sensitivity of 11%, and breast cancer was a sensitivity of 30%.
Did they talk about like the negative predictive value of the test or anything like that?
Yeah, so I have that in another slide.
Sorry.
Here. No, good question. If I can get my slides.
Because I think that would be, where I would see the utility in it. You have a negative test, how confident can you feel versus...
I think I have positive predictive values. So the Pathfinder study was the next study, the most recent study that got reported, and this was presented at ESMO, which is the European Society of Medical Oncology, the big conference that gets a lot of traction in Europe, and a lot of people from the U.S. go to this conference. And so they reported this was their first study where they took participants over the age of 50 who are at an elevated risk and non-elevated risk of cancer, and they determined elevated and not elevated by like smoking history, prior cancer, genetic predisposition, etc. And they ran the test on those individuals. And so their positive predictive value, meaning a positive test, means that the patient has cancer. Were they able to confirm cancer in a patient with a positive test? 45%. Positive predictive value. I didn't see a negative predictive value. Just to give you some numbers, so out of over 6,000 participants, cancer signal was detected, and these are patients with no known cancer. Cancer signal was detected in 1.4% of them. So probably what you predict, I guess. I don't know statistically.
Wasn't unduly high.
Right. Close to half of them were stage 1 and stage 2 diagnoses, out of the cancers that they detected. There were 35 cancer diagnoses, and almost half of them were early stage.
In any of these tests, did they attempt to, was it stratify based on, other known covariates of, oncogenesis, smoking, HPV status, age, things like that?
In terms of the positive predictive value, or like
when they're screening these tests, was there any, I guess, thought to, because obviously if you have a higher risk population, those numbers are probably going to be different.
Yeah, it's probably broke down. So I couldn't get the whole study. I think it was just the access to the trial. I'm not sure if it was. I think I just didn't have the whole access to the paper where they actually listed those covariants. What I read with the abstract and what was a press release in ESMO, that I didn't have that information, but I'm sure they do.
Just curious.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure in the higher risk that cancer signal was a higher percentage in the higher risk. You assume that. What I saw as challenges with this test, and this is the Gallery test, relative low sensitivity for early stage cancers. So they did break that down in the feasibility study to where how sensitive was it at picking up so a patient with early stage of esophageal cancer, and they have esophageal cancer, how likely is it to be a positive signal in that case? 12%. So you're talking early stage, not very good at picking up on early stage disease. Most of the stage 4 diagnoses had 85 or above % chance of having a positive signal on the test. So better at picking up on later stage disease, probably because you have more cell-free DNA or tumor DNA circulating around. So low sensitivity for early stage. I saw, even though the sensitivity was high, there's still, if you look at the whole population, they kind of talked about this in one of the papers I read, if you screen the entire U.S. population, even with the relative high sensitivity, you'd have 1 million people with false positive results.
Right.
So if you're using it ubiquitously in the whole U.S., it's still a high false positive rate.
What's the cost of this?
About $1,000 a test. So that's the other question. At $1,000, are you doing it every year? Are you doing it every few years?
What does the company recommend?
They recommend to do it as a supplement to other screenings. So they don't recommend certain.
There's no time interval.
Time interval, yeah. So, yeah. So the question is, I don't think it's ready for really any physician to order this test. I think if it would be interesting though if you have a patient who is at high risk and maybe you get a CT scan of the lungs because they meet screening criteria and there's a nodule, would you have a positive signal on this test that we would most often be getting biopsies?
Yeah, I think there's actually other there's other products out there I think that
there's many other companies, yeah. So Exact Sciences are coming out with something like this.
They're looking at this for that exact situation where, we run into this all the time. You have a lung nodule, you follow it, it grows, it's got a bunch of characteristics of cancer.
Right.
Patient either can't get a biopsy or doesn't want a biopsy. Can you make treatment decisions based on these type of peripheral blood tests? I think that is a very an area where I feel like there could be some, utility.
Yeah, I think where imaging is suggestive, and then you might not be able to safely diagnose it based on biopsy. Yeah,
I do worry about things like this though, where you just kind of, like you already kind of alluded to, blanketly shotgun them to every person in the United States. I just feel like you would end up with probably the extra anxiety and procedures and risks of those procedures that so many more patients would have to go to. It would be hard for me to believe that would be less than maybe the potential benefit of catching, a treatable early stage cancer. I don't know. It just would be, there would have to be a lot of math for that to make sense, but
yeah,
definitely promising in a theoretical sense.
It's tough too, because, it seems like insurance companies are already offering this. And so you get a patient with a positive signal, and then you order a bunch of imaging and it shows nothing. And then, it ultimately is going to lead to more imaging because that patient's going to be anxious and, well, it's just not showing. I got to scan you again in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, So it's leading to a lot of testing for sure. And positive predictive value, positive signal detects cancer about 45% of the time. It's not great. So, but you know,
I think it's interesting. And
interesting
I think
test.
it'll be as these different products come out, you know, how they study it and how they market it will be very interesting to watch.
Yeah. And it's not. I think the cost is actually $949, not $1,000. But I was a little surprised they didn't charge more than that.
That's lower than I would have guessed.
Yeah, right. Because NGS testing, which is when we know a patient has cancer and say we're trying to make treatment decisions based on the genetics of the cancer, when we send out to different companies for that analysis, it's I think insurances get charged a few $1,000s at least for that testing. So this is relatively inexpensive compared to that. But it just depends on how often do you need to send this test? Do you even need to send the test? You know, I am not in favor of doing it yet. I think there could be scenarios in the future where you could use this testing in a patient who you strongly suggest or suspect that there might be a cancer somewhere. To use it as, you know, maybe a confirmation test. But I think their technology will get better because really they're using probably, you know, some AI and like looking at the all these methylation profiles. So they're using a lot of data to come up with what's a positive cancer signal and what's not. And I feel like that could only get better with time, you know, with them having more information. So I think that picking up on cancer signals in more individuals will get better with time with this technology. It's just not there yet, I don't think.
Well, I wish you would have told me that you did this speech or presentation sooner. I could have.
She could have been there and helped you.
Could
marketing.
advertise it on social media and stuff.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
But not everyone can be at the Exchange Club. You have to be a member. Or you have to be a guest of someone.
What's my ignorant? What is the Exchange Club?
They're
I honestly have no idea.
So I think there are exchange clubs in
It's
many...
one of those if you have to ask, you know. I'm sure I'm not cool enough to.
No, they're all about community service and serving the community. So I think they have a lot of community outreach where they have different programs that they set up for like volunteer programs, and
so these are
they
like
help out with
business
school
leaders, or the
a variety of business leaders, people with military background, like
got it.
You know,
it's like a Rotary Club kind of.
Yeah, I think so. I don't want to say that if it's not true, but yeah, it's sort of like that.
Let's look up Exchange.
Yeah,
let's see what Dr. Google says.
But basically, a group of professionals who are
a group of men and women working to make Jacksonville, in this particular case, a better place to live through community service projects, etc. So
yeah,
makes sense.
They give
weekly guest speakers.
Like when I was there giving the talk, they gave a couple scholarships to a couple high school students, which they do every year. So yeah, so it's a good club.
Very cool.
Nice, yeah. Cool. Very interesting.
And I got to go to Ruth's Chris and have a steak as a result.
Okay, now we're talking.
So you were bribed with food. Nice.
Bribed with food and my patient who I like and respect a lot. So.
Right.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of the Rick and Danny Show. Again, apologies for the long hiatus, but hopefully we'll be back to more regular episodes like last year.
We'll definitely be back, Rick. We're excited about 2023.